What's up guys, it's Childlike Kate here with a new video, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about my quitting story and kind of what transpired when I decided to quit Revature. I'll answer some questions about do I owe them money and some other questions that I was asked in the comments, and then kind of go into what I will be doing going forward. So if you would like to see all of the above, just stay tuned. As I mentioned in the last video, I was having a lot of difficulty with the projects and had just become overwhelmed with stress, and I decided to quit on the day that P1 was to be presented. So on the day that project 1 was due, I reached out to my trainer and let her know that I wanted to resign. I didn't know exactly what were the steps to do so, so I just messaged her and I told her that, due to the nature of training, I figured that there would be more of a conversation, so whenever she was ready, just to let me know. But I did not show up for work that day because due to the nature of how this program is set up, or this job, you would owe money for the training, so I didn't want to continue to sit through training and potentially owe more money for being there for more days. So she wrote me back and she said, let's chat the following day, and we did get on a call and we talked. So the next day we got on Zoom and we had a little conversation about why I was deciding to quit. She did know that I was having some trouble in the program, but she advised that I was not doing the worst of everyone in my cohort. So she understood me wanting to resign, but at the same time knew that I could still fight and stay in the game because I wasn't doing that bad. I mean, I had just gotten like a lime green on QC the week before. And let me rewind a little bit. Before deciding to officially say, okay, I'm done, I'm resigning, and send the message to my trainer, I was kind of going back and forth in my head on whether or not I should make that decision, because I knew that I would potentially owe Revature up to like $32,000 if I'm remembering the number correctly. And I don't have $32,000 on hand. So that was in the back of my mind, but I really felt for my mental health and like the stress that I was under at the time that I just needed to take a step back and rethink if this is what I really wanted to do. Because when I decided to sign the contract and move forward with Revature, I told myself that this was my opportunity to see if I really did want to go into a career in software development. I was pretty sure before, but then I had that moment of transition where things just weren't going in my favor, and I said, well, maybe this is not the thing for me. And then I found out about Revature, and it seemed like the perfect opportunity to get my foot in the door. So I said, let's see what it's about. We'll see if software engineering is really the thing that I want to do. So at the time that I was contemplating my resignation, I was thinking, okay, maybe I want to go into something else. UX design seems pretty interesting. It was something that I had thought about previously, but I was just so locked in on software engineering, and I was like, I just really feel like I can do it, that I didn't want to give up. But I was like struggling in this training that I was like, maybe a non-coding technical job would make more sense for me. So I spoke with my therapist about it, and she recommended making a pros and cons list, which makes sense, and I don't know why I didn't just do that before. I just felt like I was kind of drowning in all the information, honestly, when it came to the training. And in the process of learning, I had found out about many other opportunities that I was like, dang, I kind of could have done that and it probably would have been more my pace, or I could have done this and that would have made more sense for me. For example, 100 Devs, that's led by Leon Noel is his name on social media. It's a free boot camp that he leads on Twitch and YouTube, and he started it in 2020, and I wish I had known about it then because I would be done with it already. But he started a new cohort in January of 2022, and that seemed like the perfect opportunity for me to jump in. Even though I would be a few weeks behind everyone else, He has what's called a catch-up crew, so all the people that come in a little bit late, or if you just fall behind on your work, you can get together with the catch-up crew and get caught up to where the rest of the group is. So let me tell you about some of the considerations that I was thinking about when making my decision to quit. The pros of working with Revature was that I would not have to go through the hard and strenuous interviewing process trying to land my first job, because they give you all the training and you have projects, you have a portfolio, and they basically set you up with your first 2 years of experience. Then you can go on from there and get a job. So that was really important to me because I know how hard it is to get that first job. I'm in a lot of different groups of self-taught engineers, boot campers, people with computer science degrees, and everybody kind of has the same story. Though there is an abundance of work available, people are struggling to get jobs, but that's all a totally different topic. People are struggling to get that first job. You really have to network and be prepared to go through this interviewing process, or just know someone. Getting in that first junior role can be a very tough process. So Revature kind of streamlines that whole process and gets you in there to get that first 2 years of experience. I did have cons when it came to Revature, aside from owing them money. For one, in your first 2 years, you're making between $55,000 and $75,000, which is below a lot of starting salaries for a software engineer. Then there was the possibility of having to move anywhere in the United States. And at the time that I interviewed with Revature, I was okay with that. I was in a transitional period in my life where nothing was really stable and I was up for anything. But I started therapy in December of last year, 2021. And the very first thing, the most important thing that I wanted to see in my life was stability. And I talked about that on the first day of therapy. When I told my therapist about my new job with Revature, she said, well, that doesn't seem very stable. Having to move somewhere and possibly relocate after the first year, it's not giving stability. And I was like, yeah, I know, but it's only for a year, maybe 2. And after that, then I can settle down and really be stable in one place. And who knows, maybe if I move to Chicago and fall in love with it, I'll want to stay there forever. We'll see. But when the new year came around and I started focusing on my goals for the new year and I was thinking about that desire for stability, that was the most important thing to me, because every other goal I had when it came to building community and the new relationship that I had kind of just started and being close to family and working on my family relationships, all that required me to be stable. So I thought, what will I do if I resign from Revature? Am I done pursuing software engineering? I don't think so, especially since I knew about 100 devs. So I said, well, if I dive into 100 devs, I will have the portfolio I need. Leon really emphasizes networking. So I would begin putting myself out there to get that first job on my own, which I knew would be more of a risk because it wasn't guaranteed that I would start a new job in the spring. Whereas with Revature, I was definitely going to be assigned to a client as long as I passed that first interview. However, when I left my last employer, my manager and a few other people knew why I was leaving, and they said, when you're ready to come back, let us know. We know that you'll be coming back with new skills in web development. We're always hiring developers. So when you are done with your training, let us know. We will make sure you get an interview. So I felt pretty secure in the possibility of going back to my old employer in a new role, at least getting the interview. So when considering all of this, yes, it was a risk to quit Revature, but I felt like the possibilities that I had on the other end were worth something, were worth taking that leap of faith. So I prayed before sending my trainer the message, and I said, God, I'm taking this leap. I believe that, I can make something happen on this other end, and whatever happens with me potentially owing Revature money, It's in your hands. You'll work it out. If I need to go on a payment plan, I'll do that, but I'm willing to take the leap. So now back to the Zoom call with my trainer. She, of course, brings up the fact that there's the potential of owing revature money. There's a contract, so I can't just quit. She asked, was she the only person that I reached out to? Because if I had reached out to HR directly, then immediately they would start talking about breach of contract and deciding how much I owed. But because I reached out to only her, she said, just think about it. I feel like you're still in a good position to get what you need to. Wherever you're behind, you can get caught up during the staging process, still go through the interviews, and just fake it till you make it. Because I was so close to the end. After thinking about everything she said, I decided to stay. I said, okay, I won't quit, I'll stay, and I'll go through the process of starting P2. So everybody was already in groups for P2. They had decided it the day before when I wasn't there. So she gave me the option of joining 2 groups, and I chose based off of what they were building. So I decided to join a group that was building an online game that was kind of like bingo, and the boards were based off of TV series, and you fill in the bingo cards based off of what would potentially happen in each episode. You could have solo player or multiplayer. It had multiple functions. We had to set up an external API with IMDb, so a lot of different factors went into it, and it seemed like it would be pretty interesting. And this project was going to require a front end because we had just learned about front end development with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Well, I joined my group late, of course, and they haven't really gotten into building anything. They were just deciding who's going to do what and how we're going to do things. And we were setting up an ER diagram to kind of figure out dependencies and whatnot. So I don't know if anyone else is familiar with this feeling, but when I joined the group and we started talking about what we're doing, what we were going to do for the project, and making plans, the anxiety just took over. I just felt unprepared, and I guess like I shouldn't have been there. And I never like feeling that way. Anytime I'm in a position where it's not just stress, but straight up anxiety, and it's building up to where I know I'm gonna have an anxiety attack at some point, I have to get out of the situation. So I joined the group on Thursday, and I just felt so anxious about everything that on Friday I wrote my trainer again and said, hey, I've sat and I've thought about everything, and I really have to go. So whatever I gotta do, I'll do it, but I gotta go. So that was like Friday the 28th. We get on a call. She asked me what's going on, and I explain everything and let her know, like, I really just need to take a step back and figure out if I want to continue with software engineering, if I want to go into UX design or something not involving coding, or if I even want to be in tech at all. Like, I just need to figure out what the heck I'm doing with myself. And she understood. She let me know that when I talked to her, the previous time was maybe the day before or 2 days before, she let me know that she had spoken with her manager and let her know what was going on. And he said that if I could just sit through next week and take the assessment, so the QC, and see how that goes. If I didn't do well, then they would let me go on a technical release. And if I was let go on a technical release, and I did decide that this is something that I did want to do, I could come back to revature. I would just have to wait 6 months. She did mention, however, that because I brought up the anxiety and speaking with my therapist to kind of like get my head straight, that there was the potential to be released for medical reasons if I could just get a note from my therapist. And if I did that, I could come back at any time once I felt better. I wouldn't have to wait 6 months. But either way it went, I still needed to wait until the assessment the prior week, or the coming week. I still needed to wait until the assessment the next week to see if they would let me go or not. Well, I sit through the next week, not really trying too much because I'm anticipating leaving. So since we were working on P2, I was present for any lectures that we had at the top of the day. For the second half of the day, when we worked on project 2, which is technically project 3, I just kind of sat back and let my group do what they needed to do. And I know that sounds terrible, but I didn't want to take on any ownership of any features because I knew that I was basically halfway out the door, and I didn't want to leave them scrambling to figure out how to take on what I was leaving behind. So I wasn't too active. I just gave my input whenever they were asking certain questions, but I didn't take on ownership of building anything. So the assessment comes around, and this is the QC assessment that I talked about in the last video, where I kind of got screwed up with the design of the coding assessment. So I knew I'd done poorly, and I was just waiting for my trainer and her manager to get the results of the QC and then let me go. Well, I had to sit through the rest of that week, even though we got our results on like Wednesday or Thursday. I still had to do a one-on-one. She let me know, she confirmed that I was going to have a technical release, but there was still the option to do a medical release if I brought in a note from my from my therapist. And I did ask for the note from my therapist. The communication times were taking too long, and I was just ready to be out of there. So I said, hey, just release me on a technical release. If I decide to come back, I'll wait the 6 months. It's no problem. And so my trainer said, okay, that's fine. Well, I never got an official, okay, you're done, this is your last day. I go through the whole week, the whole first week of February, not really working, not really contributing to P2, just kind of being present and offering any feedback on what was going on, just kind of waiting to be let go. I get through the whole day Friday and nothing. So Sunday morning, I sent a message to my trainer like an hour before the start of the day to say, hey, I know we decided that I was being released, but do I need to show up this week because, you know, haven't really signed any paperwork or anything. What's up? So she says, hey, yes, if you could please show up today. Thank you so much for your patience. We just have to make everything official and then you should be good to go. So about halfway through the day is when they finalized everything and I was good to go. And she let me know that HR would be reaching out shortly. So Monday, February 7th was my official last day with Revature. Now, the question that I'm sure you all have been waiting for. Do I owe them money for breaking the contract? The answer is no. Because of the way that I was released on a technical release, or even if it was the medical release, because of the circumstances, I did not owe them for the training. If I had gone to HR directly and let them know that I wanted to leave, then I would have been hit with a breach of contract and told how much I would be owing them. That is why my trainer asked me to kind of be patient and ride through the process of letting me go on a technical release, because the first time we talked, we had a very in-depth conversation. We probably talked for an hour. They're people that you're dealing with, not machines, and it's not black or white, yes or no on breach of contract. If you are communicative about what you're going through, then they are willing to work with you if you're willing to work with them. My trainer did advise there was another person before me who wanted to leave, and they tried to offer them the same situation, but that person wasn't patient and thought that they were being played to be made to sit through the entire training process and have to owe more money. So they went directly to HR, and that's when they got hit with the breach of contract, and they did end up owing money. But because I dealt with my trainer directly and let her do things on the back end on her side, then I was able to be let go on a technical release, which is like a termination for technical inaptitude. And so I do not owe Revature money for the training that I did go through. And I think my projects kind of helped me to, I want to say, get away with that, because P0, although it compiled, it wasn't complete. It had a lot of unhandled exceptions, and I got a red, so basically a fail on that project. And then P1 was never submitted, so they don't know what was done or completed with that project. Although I had made it almost to the end of training, I had nothing to show that I absorbed all of the information and could take my training and go somewhere else, which I will let y'all know that I can't at this point unless I get myself together and build out some projects to have a portfolio. I'm not in a position to just go get another job right now. Another thing that my trainer did mention while we were talking about my decision to leave was that they were not offering mutual releases because their clients had a high demand and really needed engineers. So they really weren't letting anyone go no matter how bad you were doing. They were just going to help you figure it out. So as a couple of people have mentioned in my comments, yes, I definitely could have stayed and fought through the entire process because they were not going to let me go because they needed me to give to a client. They needed engineers to send out on projects. And so honestly, if I hadn't let imposter syndrome just take over and feel like I needed to take a step back and rethink my life and my career choices and things like that, I could have stayed. And honestly, I have had some days since leaving where I felt like I should have just stayed because I'd probably be working already on a client project. So someone asked, can I come back to revature? And the answer is yes. Because I was let go on a technical release, I have to wait 6 months from my last day, probably about mid-August, to reapply if I wanted to go back to revature. If I had gotten the note from my therapist about my mental state at the time, then I would be able to come back whenever I regrouped and got myself together, but I was a little too impatient to wait on that note. So I took the technical release and I have to wait 6 months. Someone else asked if I still plan to pursue software engineering. Honestly, I have been back and forth about this so much over the past few weeks. Because of the roller coaster this learning process has been, a lot of times I lean towards no. And I want to pursue something that's non-technical or non-coding. So I've looked into UX design and implementation, specifically for Salesforce. And that's something that I have decided to do regardless of going forward with software engineering or not. And quick little side story. I actually was leaning toward implementation consulting. The company that was #1 on my list, their recruiter did get back to me. I feel like my resume and my experience spoke to what I could do in implementation. But the recruiter for this particular company, my ideal company if I was going to go this route, advised that he was interviewing people who already had experience with Salesforce. He could see on my resume that I was currently learning Salesforce, but at the time I did not have a certification. I still don't. And I don't have any real world building experience with Salesforce. So he advised that I go through Trailhead, do some super badges, or join Talent Stacker so that I can get some experience if I wanted to continue on this Salesforce path, and then come back once I had some experience under my belt. Even with me doing that, I am still having a hard time letting go of software engineering, but I have decided to narrow my focus more specifically on web development. I am going to complete the 100 Devs free bootcamp because I have some projects that I personally want to build. So even if I don't get a job as a web developer, I at least will have the skills to do what I want to do. But either way, I'm open to going into Salesforce as a consultant, basically in an admin position, Salesforce admin, or a web development job. I could just narrow on one or the other, but I feel like having that Salesforce certification won't hurt me. And it would honestly open up more opportunities, like being specifically a Salesforce developer. I have had those days where I feel like I'm just so over learning and I really just want to get to work. And once I start a job, then I can go back to learning more information and expanding my knowledge. So I have applied to a lot of apprenticeship roles. I would say the most important thing that I've learned from this experience was to not count myself out before the world does. I have let imposter syndrome and anxiety and stress get the best of me during the process in the revature training. And if I had just focused on the possibilities and been more of an optimist and fought through the process, I know it would have been a breeze through P2 and P3, because those are group projects and it's not like I have to build everything on my own from the ground up. And you have your peers to work with and help lean on. You can support them. In hindsight, I know that I gave up on myself too soon. In my searches to find a job right now, I have come across a couple of other companies that are like revature, and I have sent an inquiry to one. And so if I do have a conversation with their recruiter, I will give you a video about how it works with them, because I am considering it. I'm giving myself until the end of August to have a job in either Salesforce or web development. And if that doesn't work out by August 31st, then I will either reapply to revature or a company like revature. So I would be starting the process all over again. But because I know what it was like, I've been through it, I know how to get through next time. But hopefully it doesn't come to that. That is it for this video. I hope you at least enjoyed it for entertainment. I don't know how informational it is to help you with making your decisions about revature or not, but I at least wanted to share my journey. Thank you all so much for watching. If you want to continue to go on this journey with me, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so that you are alerted when I drop new videos. See you in the next video.